Okay, this is the final review for Ozark ever. I reviewed part 1 altogether, so I'm reviewing part 2 altogether for the last season. Part 1, I had, if I remember correctly, very good things to say. They left every episode something was happening that you didn't expect, and they left it off with kind of a, oh man, kind of moment. That was not the case for part 2. I'll say that. I'm going to keep it at a little, even though it was a bit more than that, disappointed after giving it some time. I didn't review it right after I watched it because I wanted to let it soak in because it was a lot. And yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting, and I don't mean that in a good way. Let me jump right into it. I feel like I have to sneeze, so if I sneeze at some point, I'm sorry. Ready? Ooh, sorry. I'm not going to cut that because I don't cut these videos. But so, again, I'm talking slow because I'm trying to make sure I get everything right here. We'll get into the ending of it, obviously at the end. I think a big issue with part 2 was that nothing happened. I think once Javi gets killed in like the first episode, he was, as annoying as he was the catalyst for most of the exciting things going on, because he was an angry leader and he was right there with them. Like, he wasn't all the way in Mexico, he wasn't in jail, he was there seeing everything, so it was hard for them to function with him there. And I don't get why they had to kill him off in the first episode, because then I see what happened, the trickle-down effect of like, oh, now we're in a bad situation. Now Jason Bateman had to go to Marty. I'll go Marty, not Jason Bateman. Marty has to go to Mexico and literally lead the cartel, which was cool, but also short-lived. And then they end up finding out about the sister being the one that puts the hit out on Navarro. And then they end up teaming up with the sister because they wouldn't be able to get the stuff Navarro needs in time, and they don't want him to kill him. So they're like, let's save it. All sounds so much more interesting than it was because they sparsed it out throughout 7 episodes. And that could have been done in 3. Even 2, I'd say. And it would have been more exciting if done because of how quickly it would have had to move, which is most of what Ozark does. It's like things have to move like this because you're dealing with the cartel. So to try to sparse that out over 7 episodes was tired. It was very tired, like 3 episodes in, because it was like, even though you don't know where it's going, you almost kind of go, okay, well, whatever it is, can it happen already? Because now I don't even know how it's going to go this long. And not saying that like you really think that actively during that, but now I think back and I'm like, yeah, I really wasn't ever intrigued by what was going to happen for any reason other than I've watched this show for 4 seasons and I don't know how it's going to end. I didn't really care about what was actively happening. I just cared about how they were going to close this whole chapter out, and they depended on that for this part 2. They were very conscious of that, and you can see it because they dragged out a very little bit of material, which shows that both the creators and probably Netflix just went, we don't have a lot of things that are making us money right now. Netflix is struggling. This is probably their best show that was coming out at the moment. It definitely was. And so they're like, we're going to 2-part this thing and we're going to make some money off it. Same thing I think they're going to do with Stranger Things. Make people wait 3 years, build anticipation, pour this money into it, and then release it in 2 parts so you can get twice as much money, which I actually don't know if that's true, but there's something going on business-wise behind it. And they did that with this. They did not need to do 2 parts. They didn't need to do 14 episodes. 10 would have been more than enough, which is sad because Ozark was on track to be like one of those Breaking Bads where they just never did anything wrong. It wouldn't have reached Breaking Bad because Breaking Bad's kind of the pinnacle, but it would have been up there of like, if you watch Breaking Bad, you're going to love Ozark. And now I think you will, but it definitely doesn't have that same ending. Ruth's storyline was over once she kills Javi. So it's like, if you're going to, spoiler alert, if you're going to kill off Ruth, why would you wait until the last episode when it seems like she's actually more hopeful to move on? You know, where it's like, if Ruth was a minor character and it were like season 2, it's like you kill her and then it has trickle-down effect the way Ben did. It's like Ruth was one of the main characters and was in a really good place, and so you leave us on the most sour note of like, Ruth finally had promise in her life and she died. And it's like, I don't care what the message is of like, oh, the birds touched everything they touched ended up dying and only they made it out alive. It's like, I get that, but it's like, at this point, you weren't building towards that. You just weren't. And it's like, if you were, you wouldn't have put the story you did into Ruth, if that makes sense. It's like, it just didn't correlate very well, especially for a show that's usually so specific and so good. It seemed somehow, I don't even want to say rushed, just wrong. Like, I don't know who was in the room and went, it has to be done. You know, like people talk about like Game of Thrones, and it's like, oh, Daenerys, like, as unsatisfying as it was how they did it, that had to happen. She had to die or everyone else was going to. That wasn't the case with Ruth. Things would have been great if Ruth died. And now they also, 3, it's very crazy how 3, the character, they should not have put him in this show. And then they realized it very early on. They went, we have nothing to do with this character. Like, they struggled to even make Wyatt relevant. Like, once they killed off the uncles and the dad, they really struggled to keep the Langmores relevant. Thinking back to it, it's like Wyatt had no, so they tie him to Darlene, which made no sense, and everybody knew it. And like, even in the talk back after, they talk about it was kind of like a joke that they just turned into a thing. And it's like, it was a stretch to try to keep them involved, and it was never interesting. Like, Wyatt being with her was never interesting. It was never believable. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of reasons why, but the Wyatt death was very surprising. But then once he died, at like 3, there was nothing left. They didn't even try. They don't give him any camera time. And to the point where they want you to just forget he exists, because at the end, they're implying that like Ruth has no one. She has no reason to live. She's this, she's that. Like, towards the end, like trying to make it seem like, oh, if she dies, she dies. When she has like a boy that she's still raising. And like another cousin who's the brother of the one who's been, like, she's struggling, but it's like, they even have like a little moment on top of the van. It's like, and then they never explain like, what's going to happen to 3 now? Nothing. They just act like he doesn't exist. And that's some of the most careless writing I've ever seen in my life, which I hate to say, but it's like, that is one of the biggest failures I've ever seen in any drama TV show. They completely forgot about a character who was most heavily affected by the biggest part of what happened this season. When Ruth kills people, like, you don't see his reaction to his brother dying. You like, they downplay everything, and it's like, I get he's not the main character. It's like, there's got to be something there because we know he exists, and they give us nothing. And there's no excuse for that. I don't care if he's too old to show or whatever, because he did look really old, but you have to figure that out. You signed up, you dug your, like, you made your bed in LA in it, whatever you say. It just was very careless, and they fell really short on that. The second half of the season, I would say, didn't need to happen. They could have tied up all of this in those first 7 episodes. Maybe they would have needed an extra 3 to get to 10, and I would have enjoyed that. But 14 was too many for the subject matter they had. Don't understand the whole car accident happening. I think that was definitely written, if they had the idea that they were going 14 episodes, that was written as a cliffhanger for the first half with no real context in the second, because their only context is like, they get in a crash, nobody gets seriously injured, not even a concussion, like a bad concussion, which, whatever. And their lesson is that this taught us we're going to make it out alive. Like, you're supposed to go, wow, if they made it through this, they're going to make it through anything. It's like them trying to force the whole, like, look, they're going to make it out alive thing. Like, everyone's rooting for that, which I guess everyone is on some level. But it's also like, as a viewer, you've accepted that there's no way they're ever going to be okay after this. So if they die, that'd be more cathartic. That would have been more beautiful if, like, Ruth is the character that's like, she's the one that deserves the new start. She started where they're ending and ended up where they started, where it's like, she's clean, she's got a life to live. They started where they have a life to live. They're now as dirty as it ever gets and will always be. These kids are scarred forever, and they're never going to be successful in life at all, ever. Like, this family is done. They're broken in every facet of the word, and they lean into that. And so the only direction to go is like, which would have been so satisfying is, for me, it would have been either Jason Bateman and Laura Linney go to jail or one or the other. Ruth gets out, and there's a moment between Jason Bateman and Ruth, who have been the father-daughter of this whole show, where Jason Bateman goes, if I got anything out of this, it was a life for you. Please go enjoy your life. Maybe he sends the kids with her and goes like, you know them. Like, the relationship she's created with those kids, it would have made so much sense. And it would have been this, like, people can be, oh, that's not Ozark. And it's like, Ozark didn't have a tone where it was like, oh, it needed to end this way. It didn't. Ozark never had a tone that described like, oh, it's going to have to end this way. We're like, Breaking Bad, Walter White had cancer. We knew he was going to die. Nobody had a sickness here. Nobody had a target on their head. You know, it was a matter of like, they get the job done or they don't. And so on that level, it's like, that would have been the perfect ending. You send Ruth off, maybe send the kids with her. Marty maybe dies, or Laura Linney dies, or Wendy dies, or they go to prison, or whatever. And it's like, because they're not going to function this way. And then they also, like, not that that's enough, but it's like, they don't even let you know if they do or not. They end it with the most irrelevant agent coming back after whatever happens to him and finding the ashes for Ben, which is like, they don't even explain how he did it, where it's like, we see him seeing it a couple times, and then like we see him leave, and we really are supposed to expect that this man went to Chicago for a couple days, because as long as we wait for these episodes, like, this was only a couple days after they offered him this job. You're telling me he took the job, went to Chicago, and in 2 days went, wait a second, what was in that cookie jar? And went, let me come back up. I get he's a detective, but that's a reach. I'm sorry. And then he breaks in their house and waits on the trampoline. It's very dramatic. And then we see that Noah, is that his name? Their son, we get a blackout and then we hear him shoot him, which is like, what are we supposed to piece together that now the kid is too far gone? And it's like, now he's also got blood in his hands, because we saw earlier in the show, obviously, Wendy's responsible for her brother's death. Now you see Jason Bateman. I keep wanting to go back and forth between their names. Marty goes and runs the cartel, and he has a man wrongfully killed, and so then it's like, oh, they've both crossed the line now, which again would go into like they're hopeless, end the show with them kind of having to give in to it. It's like whether they get out or not, they go to jail or they get killed. That would have been the most cathartic ending for a show that, to my knowledge, isn't coming back. Because now they've left it where like maybe they wanted to leave the door open to come back for like a surprise 5th season, but they did like the whole post-series talkback thing. So now I don't know. It's like, but for me, I'm like, the only way this show isn't ruined by this last season is if they have a shocking 5th season reveal or a spin-off where they explain some of this. Because this is terrible. Absolutely awful. Like the ending. You kill off Ruth for almost no reason from a character who we all hate. Like, I feel like I speak for a lot of people when it's like, Navarro would have been the better choice for them to late. I know they couldn't figure out the situation, but it's like, fans like Navarro more than his sister who came in out of nowhere, tries to kill Navarro, and is like threatening Wendy. And it's like, she was trying to throw them under the bus, and it's like, why did we want to see her succeed in both getting what she wanted, killing her brother, and killing Ruth? Who is this woman to have been able to do those 3 things? She was worse than Javi. It's just, I know this video is already too long. Very disappointed in Ozark. I've talked myself out of like a little disappointed. Not a good second half of the season. Didn't ruin the series for me, but heavily docks it on where it stands on my all-time list because endings are big for me, and this was probably the worst ending they could have put together. Absolutely the worst ending. They didn't answer many questions. They left a lot of things untied, and they kill off the wrong character. They took the whole someone needs to die here and went, who's the character everyone doesn't want to see die? And killed her 3 minutes before the end of the show and gave us nothing. Like, not that like, oh, it was cathartic, maybe she said. It was just a bad death. It was like the same thing as Ben, where it was sad, crushing, and you go, how is this going to work out? And you don't know. So, just disappointed. But Ozark is over. Go watch the show, because it's still a fantastic show. But I warned you about the ending. Let's say that. All right, that's Ozark. Peace.